The front door was still cracked open. I stood in the foyer, barefoot, heart pounding, one hand on the doorframe like it could steady me. My nightgown clung to my back. It was still damp from sweat, or maybe fear. I couldn't tell anymore. Arthur was gone. No note, no suitcase, not even a coffee cup in the sink. He'd left the driveway at 6:04 a.m. I know because the Ring camera caught the taillights of my Buick Enclave pulling out. My car, my name on the title. The safe in the den had been emptied, retirement account folders gone. My late husband Walter's coin collection, the one Arthur said he'd get appraised, not a trace. The little black velvet box I kept behind the books, empty. The ruby earrings Walter gave me for our 25th anniversary were gone. So were the Cartier cufflinks. I'd kept those, foolishly sentimental, like they'd bring me closer to the man who'd never fooled me the way Arthur had. I wanted to scream. Or maybe I already had. I don't remember. But then, on the dining room table, something out of place. A small, folded receipt. I almost missed it, wedged under the placemat. It wasn't from a jeweler or bank. No, this was worse. Tracer Diagnostics. One standard paternity DNA panel. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The name field was blank. But the client email listed at the bottom made my stomach lurch. lsmith1933@innomail.com. I didn't know anyone by that name. But I knew what I was looking at, and what it meant. I never had a child with Arthur Daniels, but I did have a daughter. In 1966, a closed adoption. I never told Walter. Never told a soul after the paperwork was signed. Why would Arthur be testing paternity? I sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath me, every inch of my body aching. He'd robbed me of money, of safety, of pride. But this test meant something else. He hadn't just been playing me. He was working with someone who thought they had a right to my past, my future, my money. And they might be right. 3 months earlier, I was standing in front of the melons at Lincoln Avenue Market, trying to remember whether Walter used to thump them or press the ends. That's when I heard it, the voice. Low, easy, laced with memory. Nora May, is that really you? I turned, and there he was. Arthur Daniels. 40 years hadn't softened him much. The hair was white now, thinner at the temples, and the tan looked more Florida than farm work. But those eyes, still blue-gray, like the sky before a storm. Arthur? I blinked. Well, I'll be damned. He smiled like we were still 26 and flirting in the university library, like the decades hadn't happened. You haven't changed a bit, he said. I laughed. It came out awkward, like I wasn't sure I still remembered how. I've changed a lot, actually. My knees, my hips, my taxes. That made him grin wider. Still sharp, I like that. We talked right there by the fruit. About nothing. About everything. His job in real estate. My old interior design business. He told me he was back in town for a while, between projects. I told him Walter passed 5 years ago. He touched my hand lightly when I said it, just enough to feel remembered. It wasn't until later, after he insisted on walking me to my car, after he scribbled his number on the back of my receipt, that I realized my heart had felt lighter. That night, I called him. We had dinner at Millie's, the same spot where Walter and I used to celebrate anniversaries. I wore lipstick for the first time in months. I caught myself checking my teeth in the butter knife's reflection. He held my hand during dessert. By the 4th dinner, he'd started bringing up memories I didn't know he'd kept. Little things, like the red scarf I used to wear, or the time I spilled coffee on my thesis. He remembered me, or said he did. That felt like enough. By the end of July, his suitcase was by the front door. He never pushed. Just said things like, "You shouldn't have to carry groceries alone," or, "This house needs another set of hands." The first night he stayed over, I felt 17 again. Not because of what we did, but because of how it felt to be seen, to be chosen. I didn't know I'd just opened the door to something much colder than loneliness. I didn't know he was already looking for something else inside me. The first time he asked, it was harmless. Mind if I borrow the spare credit card? I saw a great deal on a snowblower for the driveway. I didn't even think about it. Winter was still months off, and we were in the middle of a July heat wave. But I handed him the card because it felt good to be part of something again. Sharing. Planning. The second time, it was the coin collection. These old things, he said, holding up the velvet box like it was a dusty box of buttons, might be worth something. Want me to get them appraised? I hesitated. Just a second. But he'd been trimming hedges and oiling squeaky hinges all week, wearing that humble smile like a badge of honor. I nodded. Sure. Just bring 'em back when you're done. He never did. Then came the late-night whispers. I heard him once, through the bathroom door. Not loud, just firm, calculated. She's got more than I thought. I froze, my toothbrush in my mouth, my heart in my throat. He didn't know I was outside the door. The next morning I tested him. So what did the appraiser say about the coins? He blinked, just a moment too long. Oh, yeah, they were pretty standard. Nothing major. I forgot to bring the report back, but I'll call them today. He never called. That was the moment it clicked. Not like an explosion, but a slow tightening, like a belt pulled one notch too far. The moments began stacking. The way he always asked questions about Walter's insurance. How he deflected when I asked about his family. That time he locked my office door and said, "Old houses are easy targets." He smiled so easily, but his eyes didn't crinkle when he laughed. So I stopped smiling back. That night, I took out my old business ledger. Nora May's Vintage Interiors had taught me more than color swatches and fabric sourcing. I built that company from my garage and sold it for $1.3 million in 1998. I kept my books clean. I learned how to spot liars in contract negotiations, men with smiles like Arthur's who always left clauses unsigned. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my brokerage account. The first red flag hit me in the gut. A pending request to liquidate half my portfolio. Not mine. Arthur was sleeping upstairs, in my bed, under my roof. I sat there until the sun came up, not crying, not raging, just awakening. They think women like me don't know how to fight back, that we just sit there, devastated, clinging to pearls and sentiment. They forget we built things too. We survived husbands, recessions, wars, breast cancer, betrayal. Some of us did it with kids screaming in the background and casseroles burning in the oven. Some of us, like me, did it while building a business from scratch. My business? Nora May's Vintage Interiors. For 15 years, I juggled invoices, inventory, payroll, and product launches before the world called us entrepreneurs. In 1998, I sold the business to a design firm out of New York for a clean $1.3 million. And I didn't blow it. I invested. I learned. I watched. Quietly. Now, I watched again. That morning, while Arthur was in the garden, chatting up the neighbor, Carol, with her rose bushes and gossip, I opened every account I owned. I saw the breadcrumbs. My Capital One credit card had 3 charges I didn't recognize, 2 from antique dealers, 1 from a rare book reseller in Dallas. My safe? I checked the digital logs. The fingerprint scanner recorded an access time at 2:14 a.m. 2 nights ago. I had been asleep. Arthur hadn't. I opened my journal and started making a list, not just of what he'd taken, but how he moved, the patterns, the manipulations. He didn't ask for money, he asked for access. He didn't take things, he borrowed them. He never broke trust, he bled it slowly. So I stopped talking, stopped sharing. I became the kind of quiet that makes men like Arthur uncomfortable, the kind of quiet that observes. When he asked, "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I smiled like a woman too naive to see the trap. "Just a little tired," I said. "Think I'll rest this afternoon." He offered to bring me tea. I let him. Then I forwarded the suspicious brokerage activity to my financial advisor and marked the email urgent. I copied my journal notes into a spreadsheet, not because I needed proof, but because courts do. I changed the passwords to all my major accounts. I left the joint checking account untouched, though. I wanted to see what he'd do next. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was prepared. Her name was Raina. I'd only spoken to her once, 6 months earlier, when she'd helped fix a login error on my Fidelity account. She had a warm voice, fast fingers, and the kind of precise tone that let you know she didn't miss things. So when her name lit up on my caller ID, I knew something wasn't right. "Ms. May," she said, polite but urgent. "I'm calling to verify a transaction request that came through this morning. It's for a full liquidation of your brokerage account. Roughly $221,000. "I didn't request that," I said. Raina was quiet for a second. I was afraid of that. That was all it took. No runaround. No condescension. She trusted my word over the request in her system. That kind of instinct, that's not just professional. That's human. "Do you have time to meet?" I asked. "I can be at your home in the morning," she said. And I'm bringing back up digital logs, transfer history, IP traces, everything. When she showed up at 9:03 a.m. the next day, she looked exactly like someone Arthur would underestimate. Young. Bright eyes. Clip-on badge swinging on a lanyard. Her jacket sleeves pushed up like she was ready to fix something. "May I come in?" she asked, already booting up her tablet. We sat at the dining table, the one Arthur always left cluttered with coffee rings and fake charm. Raina opened the logs. "This was the trigger," she said, pointing. "Request came through at 2:15 a.m. 3 nights ago. The access location shows your IP address, but the browser was Tor. Someone was masking the source. That's not normal for a client like you." I nodded. "Arthur Daniels, my partner. He was living here." "Was?" "He's gone," I said flatly. "And he took everything he could carry." Raina's face didn't change, but her voice lowered just slightly. "Did you report this yet?" "I will. I'm building a case." Quietly. She clicked through a few more screens, then paused. "You're smart to wait. But don't wait too long." "I'm not. Just long enough to see who else is involved." That made her lift her eyes. "You think it's bigger than him?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." We worked side by side for an hour. Raina flagged 4 suspicious login attempts and printed records I hadn't even known existed. She left me with a flash drive and her personal number. "Call me if he contacts you again," she said at the door. "Men like that don't just disappear," I smiled. "No, but they do leave trails." After Raina left, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time, not thinking, just breathing. It was the first time in weeks the silence didn't feel like defeat. I opened a new notebook, a hardbound black one I'd bought years ago and never used, and wrote across the first page in block letters. Objective. Not feelings, not memories, not what-ifs. Protect, recover, discover. 3 clear steps. First, protect. No more shared logins, no more little requests. I closed the joint checking account that afternoon, froze the last card still tied to his name, and filed a fraud alert through Equifax. Raina had given me a referral to a forensic accountant, someone who could trace wire transfers through shell companies. I scheduled a consultation. Second, recover. The coins. The antiques. The funds. My lawyer would handle that. I hadn't called him yet. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to walk into that meeting empty-handed. I wanted documentation, names, timestamps. I wanted receipts. Arthur had underestimated one thing. I've always kept receipts. And third, discover. Because the receipt he left behind, the DNA test, still sat on my sideboard like a ticking clock. He could have taken that, too. But he didn't. Which meant it wasn't just theft. This had been about someone. Someone watching, waiting, wanting something. There was only one possibility that made sense. One I'd buried so deep I'd nearly convinced myself it didn't matter anymore. But it did. I never told Walter. Never told my daughter Claire. Never told anyone. But in 1966, I had a baby girl. I was 18. She was healthy. I was not ready. The adoption was closed, clean, final. I carried that secret through every chapter of my life. I told myself it was the right thing, that a better family could give her more, That love wasn't always enough. But now someone had sent Arthur to dig through my life like it was a vault. They didn't want me, they wanted access. The initials on the receipt didn't match Arthur's L. Smith 1933 at innomail.com. L. Smith. Female, maybe. The year 1933. Maybe fake. Or maybe a clue. I'd kept that part of my past sealed for almost 60 years. But I was done hiding. If someone thought they could unlock my past to rob my future, they'd be sorely disappointed. I flipped the page in my notebook. Step 1. Trace the email. It was printed at the bottom of the Tracer receipt like an afterthought. L. Smith 1933 at innomail.com. That wasn't Arthur's email. He always used Gmail. And poorly. Passwords like Arthur1234 and Mayflowers1. Sloppy. But this one, the domain, the initials, the numbers, felt methodical, quiet, like someone who didn't want to be found. I booted up my desktop. The one in the study, not the iPad Arthur always used. I still kept my design software there, my files, my old habits. When you're in business long enough, you learn how to find things people don't want you to see. I copied the email into a tracker I'd once used on a vendor who ghosted me over a disputed invoice in 2003. It searched public logs and metadata. Crude, but effective. Nothing at first. Then I tried something else. I pulled the receipt from the folder and looked again. Tracer Diagnostics, West 74th Street. That wasn't just a mail-in clinic. I remembered the name now. A discreet, high-cost genetic service. I'd seen it once in a New Yorker article about inheritance lawsuits and, quote, bloodline confirmations. I visited their website. Nothing public. Only a login portal and a customer service number. I called it. Tracer Diagnostics, this is Angela, a voice said. How can I assist you? This is Nora May. I'm calling because I found a receipt in my home, a DNA paternity test with your company. I didn't order it. Silence. I heard typing. Then Angela spoke again. Carefully now. Ma'am, I'm afraid I can't disclose results or client information without proof of identity and a matching verification code. I'm not asking for results, I said. Just confirmation. Did someone submit my DNA? More silence. Then, yes, ma'am. A sample tied to your name and date of birth was submitted 2 weeks ago. I sat back in my chair. It was part of a parental match request, she added. 2 profiles submitted. 1 match requested. 2 profiles. Mine. And someone else's. A child. Angela wouldn't say more. She couldn't. But it was enough. Someone had used my DNA, probably stolen from a hairbrush or tissue, and submitted it to see if I was their biological mother. I pulled up the email again. L. Smith, 1933, at innomail.com. It was time to trace it directly. I ran it through an IP header extractor tool. This one was better. A paid service I'd used once during a business dispute. 10 minutes later, I had a partial trace. Seattle, Washington. Dalton and Myers law offices. My heart stuttered. That's not a scammer, that's a firm. A high-end legal firm. Arthur hadn't just been stealing. He was working for someone else. I booked the flight that afternoon. One-way ticket to Seattle. No hesitation. No panic. Just a suitcase with clean slacks, hard shoes, and every document I'd collected so far. Printed. Labeled. Clipped. When you've lived long enough, you stop waiting for someone to give you permission. You go. Arthur wanted me to sit in silence and grieve the loss. He never expected me to put on real pants, call a cab, and march toward the truth. He underestimated how dangerous stillness can be for someone like me. I arrived the next day, checked into a modest hotel near the water, ate half a protein bar, and sipped chamomile tea in bed while rereading the receipt again and again. It wasn't the receipt I was really looking at. It was what it represented, a truth I never thought would surface, printed in 12-point font and cheap ink. My child. The one I gave up in 1966. A closed adoption. I never held her, never saw her face. But someone? someone tied to this law firm, had found me and hadn't called, hadn't written. They'd sent Arthur instead. The next morning, I walked into Dalton and Myers at 10:02 a.m. sharp glass doors. Walls the color of money and confidence. A receptionist with a headset and a last name for a first name. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I believe you're representing someone who had me DNA tested without my consent." That got her attention. A junior partner, young, brisk, and visibly uncomfortable, agreed to meet me in a glass-paneled conference room. He introduced himself as Daniel. I gave him nothing but my name and the receipt. "I am not here to sue," I said, "yet, but I want to know who sent Arthur Daniels into my life, and I want to know why your firm is involved." He opened a file on his tablet, scanned something, then looked up. "You're Nora May," he said. "Yes. I can't give you details about our client's case." "I'm not asking for case details," I said. "I'm asking who stole my hairbrush and submitted my DNA to your lab." His expression shifted. He cleared his throat. "Arthur Daniels is not a licensed investigator. He was hired independently to locate and vet biological family connections. Discreetly." "By whom?" He hesitated. Then, as if the weight of my silence cracked something in him, he answered, "A woman named Leslie Smith." That name hit like a bell. "She believes you're her birth mother," Daniel said quietly now, "and that you may be nearing end of life. She wanted confirmation before reaching out." "She sent a thief into my home," I said, "to steal my DNA, rob me blind, and lie to my face." Daniel closed the file. "I don't think she knew what he was doing," he said. I stood. "Then she's more naive than I was," I said. "And that's saying something." I returned home on a Thursday afternoon, bone-tired, but sharp. Seattle hadn't given me closure. It gave me clarity. Colder and cleaner. Arthur hadn't fallen in love with me. He'd been sent by a woman who believed I was her mother. And instead of introducing himself honestly, he'd picked my locks. Emotionally, financially, I slept that night with the lights on. Not out of fear, just readiness. At 6:13 a.m., the message came. Unknown number. "Hey, just wanted to check in. You seemed confused when I left. I never took anything from you, Nora. Maybe call your bank. Love always." Love always. I almost laughed. Instead, I screenshotted the message and added it to the folder I'd labeled Arthur Fraud on my desktop. He was gaslighting me now. Testing the water to see if I was still disoriented, still heartbroken, still his. But I wasn't. Raina had already set up alerts on my accounts. The forensic accountant she'd referred me to, James Franco, no relation unfortunately, had started digging through my statements. He found the first shell company within 48 hours, Andorra Estates, LLC, registered in Delaware, no physical office. But the mailing address belonged to Arthur's cousin, Robert F. Daniels, a name I only recognized because Arthur once dropped it over breakfast while talking about family land in Vermont. My safe's fingerprint scanner? Still intact. The digital log showed Arthur's print was used at 2:14 a.m. the morning he left. So when he said, "I never took anything," I had a screen full of timestamps and IP traces that said otherwise. But what chilled me most wasn't the theft. It was the careful orchestration. He hadn't just stolen money. He had tried to destabilize me, make me question what I remembered, what I saw, what I deserved. That kind of manipulation isn't casual. It's trained. It's used. And I no longer believed Arthur was just working for Leslie Smith. He might have been working with her. The way he always asked about my estate. The way he never pushed for marriage. Just access. The DNA test, left behind like a breadcrumb on purpose. I wasn't sure what Leslie wanted now. An apology? An inheritance? A conversation? But if she'd sent Arthur in to scout her birthright before speaking to me like a human being, then she wasn't a daughter. She was a strategist. And I'd spent my life outsmarting men who thought they could sweet-talk their way into ownership. I was ready for both of them now. I used to think heartbreak was the end of something. Turns out, It's just data, you feel it. Then you file it. And once I stopped bleeding, I started organizing. The flash drive Raina gave me, I made 3 copies. One in a safety deposit box, one with my attorney, one in my freezer, double-bagged and wedged behind the frozen peas. Because I don't trust clouds. I trust cold steel and fireproof safes. The receipts started to multiply. August 4th, a $12,000 wire transfer from my Vanguard account to Andorra Estates, LLC, the Delaware shell company tied to Arthur's cousin. The transaction was disguised as a, quote, property inspection retainer. I'd never authorized it. August 6th, 3 items sold to an auction house in Denver. A vintage Rolex, a Mont Blanc pen set, and a signed Hemingway First Edition. All gifts from Walter. All missing from my safe. The sale records included item photos. I recognized my late husband's engraving on the underside of the watch. W for every hour we had. August 9th, a purchase of a one-way airline ticket from Denver to Lisbon, booked under a fake name. But the billing address? My own. Arthur was planning to disappear. But he got sloppy. Because he never expected me to know how to pull IP traces from email headers, run LLC ownership checks, or download full browser histories from our shared desktop. I opened a Chrome history and searched Tracy Sure. 5 hits. One of them included a page titled, "Can you test maternity without consent?" So I knew this wasn't just a passive request from Leslie Smith. Arthur had been researching legal loopholes, testing boundaries, deciding how far he could go. And now, I knew too. I printed everything, labeled it in a red accordion folder. Evidence. Daniels fraud / Smith maternity inquiry. I stared at that name. Smith. Not May. Not even Walters. Just Smith. Leslie Smith. I didn't know her face. I didn't know her voice. But I knew her now. The kind of knowing that lives in your gut, not your memories. She'd hired a man to infiltrate my life and steal not just my trust, but my identity, my DNA, my story. And I had one more folder to create. I opened a new file on my desktop and titled it October 3rd, Estate Meeting. Because this wasn't going to end in the shadows. They were both going to look me in the eye. Dalton and Myers didn't welcome me back. They tolerated me. The junior partner, Daniel, met me in the same glass-walled conference room. This time, I had the folder. Red, thick, tabbed. I slid it across the table before he even sat down. "This is everything I've documented," I said. "You'll find proof of theft, fraud, account infiltration, DNA misuse, and wire fraud, all tied to Arthur Daniels. You said he was hired independently. That's not true anymore." Daniels skimmed the top page. His face shifted from neutral to tense. "I've already filed a preliminary report with my attorney," I continued. "I'm not asking permission. I'm giving you a professional courtesy." He nodded slowly. "Ms. May, I think you should hear something." He opened his own folder, smaller than mine, sleeker, and turned a page toward me. A name, typed in bold. Leslie Ann Smith. Born April 4th, 1966. Adopted June 3rd, 1966. Private agency, closed records. Biological mother, unlisted. Until now. "She's your biological daughter," Daniel said gently. The paper didn't shake in my hands. I did. I stared at the words like they would rearrange if I looked long enough. Maybe spell out "forgive me," or "this was a mistake." But they didn't. "She confirmed the match 2 weeks ago," he continued. "She submitted the test anonymously. She wasn't sure you were still alive. Or mentally capable. Arthur was supposed to be discreet, background only, no contact. She told you that?" I asked. He nodded. "And she believed it?" Another nod. Quieter. "She's never tried to reach me directly," I said. "No," Daniel said. "Not yet." I slid the folder back toward me. "Then she didn't want a mother. She wanted a claim." Daniel didn't argue. "She wanted to know if she was entitled to anything," I said, "before saying a single word to me as a person." Silence stretched between us. He didn't deny it. that mattered. Miss Smith retained us to explore potential inheritance rights in the event of a biological connection. She was curious about your estate structure, and your firm helped her try to monetize a family reunion, I said. He didn't flinch. Maybe he couldn't. I closed the folder. I stood. One last question, I said. Did Arthur act alone when he emptied my safe? Daniel's jaw tensed. That, Ms. May, I truly don't know. He probably didn't. But I knew this. Whether Leslie asked Arthur to rob me or just looked the other way, I couldn't call her my daughter. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I checked into a different hotel that night. Something smaller. Older. A place with creaky floors and no room service. I needed silence that wasn't sterile. There's a particular kind of tired that lives in your bones when you realize the past you carried, quietly, gently, sometimes even lovingly, has been weaponized by someone else. I had not forgotten Leslie. Not once in 59 years. I had kept a shoebox in my closet with her hospital tag, the name of the adoption agency, and the receipt for the bus ride home. I was 18. I wore a borrowed coat and clutched a blanket the nurse had folded for me. I made peace with my decision a long time ago. Or I thought I had. But sitting on that stiff floral comforter, shoes still on, folder clutched to my chest, I realized what I'd really done all these years. I hadn't let go. I'd just waited. For a letter. A knock. A stranger with kind eyes. I thought maybe she'd want to know me. Not for money, not for medical history, just to know me. But now I knew the truth. She already had. She'd known my name, my address, my voice, my habits. Because Arthur had delivered all of it like a dossier, and she never once reached out like a daughter. She sent him to steal what she hadn't yet been legally granted. I didn't cry for the money, or the watch, or Walter's cufflinks. I cried because the only person on earth who could say Mom and mean it chose not to. She hired a middleman instead, and whether she knew about the theft or not, she knew what she was doing. I called room service just to ask for more tissues. Then I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and listened to an old voicemail from my daughter Claire, the only child I raised. She'd called 3 weeks ago, just checking in. You don't need to call back right away, Mom. Just wanted to hear your voice. I replayed that message 4 times. Because Claire, for all our bumps in distance, never once questioned if I was hers. Leslie did. She questioned everything, and not with conversation, with contracts. So I wrote a new line in my notebook. She wanted blood, not history. I returned home a different woman. Not colder, not harder, just clear. Grief has a way of turning sharp, like glass left too long in ice water. I didn't need time to cry anymore. I needed time to plan. The next morning, I called my attorney. Mr. Pennington. He'd helped me settle Walter's estate 10 years earlier, and he never forgot a name or a dollar. He was precise and, more importantly, discreet. I want to schedule a formal estate review, I said. He didn't ask why. He just asked when. October 3rd. I'll be bringing guests. Shall I prepare a trust update proposal? He asked. Yes, I said, and I want a court reporter present. Audio and transcription. Of course. And one more thing. The guests. They don't know why they're really coming. Pennington paused just long enough to let me know he understood. He didn't need details. He could smell a reckoning when it was walking through the door. The invitations went out by email the next day. Ms. Leslie Smith, Nora May, requests your presence at a private estate review regarding future trust planning and potential heir acknowledgments. This is not a legal summons, but your attendance is encouraged if you wish to be considered in forthcoming arrangements. Date: October 3rd. Location: Pennington and Locke. LLP time: 10:30 a.m. Arthur's was shorter, colder. Mr. Arthur Daniels, you are requested to attend an estate planning discussion with Ms. Nora May on October 3rd. Your prior involvement in family matters necessitates your presence. Legal counsel may attend if desired. I sent both messages from a new email address, one they hadn't seen before. No way to sniff out my intent. Then I made one final call to Claire. "Sweetheart, I'm having a little meeting about the will. You don't need to be there, but I'd feel better if you came." "Of course, Mom," she said without hesitation. "Everything okay?" "Getting there," I told her, and I meant it. The 3 chairs I asked Pennington to prepare weren't for discussion. They were for exposure. Arthur would come smug, thinking he still had me confused, emotional, weak. Leslie would come nervous, curious, maybe guilty, maybe neither. And Claire? Claire would come steady. Not because I asked her to, but because she's mine. The daughter who showed up. Blood is easy to test, but loyalty, that shows up in rooms like the one I was building. October 3rd, RD. 10:27 a.m. Pennington's office was colder than I remembered. Frosted glass walls, leather chairs too stiff to relax in, a long mahogany table that swallowed sound. Arthur showed up first. Of course he did. Early, like a man convinced he was about to be forgiven. He wore a blazer, too sharp for someone between jobs. "Morning, darling," he said like we were still playing house. "Didn't expect such formality." I didn't respond, just nodded toward the chair farthest from mine. He smirked, sat. 5 minutes later, Leslie walked in. I'd never seen her face before, but I knew her instantly. She had my chin, Walter's eyes, Claire's hesitation. She was carrying a Hermes bag I could have paid my mortgage with, and wearing a silk blouse that didn't quite hide the tension in her throat. She looked around, spotted me, offered a small, tight smile. I didn't return it. Pennington entered last, followed by a court reporter and a young paralegal with a stack of folders. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We're here to discuss potential amendments to Ms. May's estate documents, specifically matters of designation and financial history that may impact future distribution." Arthur leaned back, casual. Leslie sat still, hands folded. I cleared my throat. "I'd like to begin with a timeline," I said. "Starting 3 months ago, when Arthur Daniels entered my home under false pretenses, gained access to my accounts, and emptied my safe." Arthur shifted. Pennington held up a hand. "You'll have your chance to respond, Mr. Daniels. Please let Ms. May continue." I opened the red folder. 1 tab at a time. First, the printouts of Arthur's cash withdrawals. Then, the receipts from auction houses. Then, the wire transfer to Andorra Estates, LLC. Pennington passed them down the line like holy scripture. Arthur's face tightened. "This isn't... You're misunderstanding. You accessed my safe at 2:14 a.m. on August 9th. I said. Your fingerprint was recorded. You can't gaslight a biometric lock." Then came the final folder, the DNA report. Pennington slid it toward Leslie. Her eyes scanned the top of the page, then widened. "You are my biological daughter," I said evenly. "I confirmed that myself. What I haven't confirmed is whether you sent Arthur into my life with instructions or just indifference." Leslie opened her mouth, closed it. Pennington cleared his throat. "Ms. May has filed charges of elder exploitation, theft, and fraud. Mr. Daniels, you are being subpoenaed. Ms. Smith, you may pursue civil contact if you wish. But as of this moment, you are not named in the trust." Silence. No tears, no shouting, just the sound of the gavel in my chest. Finally falling. Pennington adjusted his glasses and clicked his pen once. The only sound in the room besides breathing. "Let's walk through the evidence," he said. He began with the first document, a detailed ledger of cash withdrawals from my brokerage account, tied to Arthur's access credentials. Each withdrawal was time-stamped, cross-referenced with security alerts, and connected to an IP address that matched my home's Wi-Fi. Arthur opened his mouth. Pennington didn't stop. Second document, the auction sales. Each item photographed, cataloged, and sold under Arthur's cousin's name. Walter's engraved watch. The Hemingway book. The Mont Blanc set I gave him on our 10th anniversary. Leslie flinched when she saw the photo of the watch. I watched her. Her hand twitched. A small movement, but not meaningless. Pennington placed the third document in front of her. The DNA report. Her eyes locked on it. She didn't look at me. Not once. "You are, biologically, Ms. May's daughter," Pennington said plainly. The paternity test was conducted by Tracer Diagnostics. The email submitted alongside the sample originated from this IP address. He tapped another page. Which belongs to your legal counsel's office. She whispered something. So low I couldn't catch it. Pennington paused. Care to clarify that, Miss Smith? She looked up. Her eyes were glossy, but not red. Not wrecked. I didn't know he was stealing from her, she said. Arthur scoffed. Oh, come on. I didn't, she snapped, then turned to me for the first time. I just wanted to know. Wanted to know what? I asked. If I was alive, or if I was worth enough to be alive for? Her face didn't crumble. It stayed still, but her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. You didn't reach out. You sent him, I said, and he took everything but the rug under my feet. I didn't ask him to. You didn't stop him. Silence. Pennington closed the folder with finality. Ms. May has made her decisions regarding the trust. Unless you wish to contest the findings legally, this concludes your eligibility. Arthur looked furious, betrayed even, like he was just now realizing the game was over, and he was the only one who hadn't known. Leslie gathered her things, quiet, tight, like a woman trying to fold herself into something smaller than the shame she felt. She didn't say goodbye. Arthur didn't move until the court reporter stood. Then, finally, he said, You really think she wants you now, after all this? I smiled. I'm not the one who needs to be wanted. It didn't hit me until I heard the phrase out loud. Ms. May has filed formal charges of elder exploitation, theft, and financial fraud. Pennington said it calmly. The court reporter typed each word, slowly and clearly, as if stamping them into stone. Arthur sat frozen. The swagger drained right out of him. Jaw set, fingers tapping, but eyes shifting like a man cornered. He looked over at Leslie like maybe she'd jump in, save him. Say it was all a misunderstanding. She didn't. She couldn't. She was too busy realizing that she wasn't in the trust. Pennington handed her a letter, folded, signed. This outlines your current legal standing, he said. No inheritance is designated. Any future contact with Ms. May must go through counsel. Leslie unfolded the letter like it might bite. I watched her eyes scan the page. She blinked twice, swallowed once. But she said nothing. I gave her a chance. I gave them both one. But love without trust is just a bruise waiting to form. Arthur stood suddenly, palms flat on the table. You know what this is, right? Revenge. You're just bitter. You want to punish us. Revenge, I said softly, would have meant dragging you out of bed by your lying tongue the day you touched my safe. Pennington cleared his throat. Mr. Daniels, you are advised to remain seated. You are currently under subpoena. Arthur froze mid-step. And that was it. That was the moment the power shifted. Not with a bang. Not with a scream. With the simple weight of consequences finally landing. He sat back down. Pennington continued. A civil suit is being prepared. Criminal charges are in motion. Law enforcement has been provided with your banking activity and safe access logs. I suggest you retain legal representation immediately. For a man who once whispered, "You made me feel young again," Arthur suddenly looked old. Leslie tucked her letter into her purse. She didn't cry, didn't rage. But when she looked at me, really looked, I saw something sharp behind her silence. Regret? Maybe. Or maybe just disbelief that I hadn't folded. She rose quietly. I understand. I doubt that, I said. But you will. Neither of them said goodbye. When the door closed behind them, Claire reached across the table and held my hand. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I didn't answer. Not with words, just with breath, full and unbroken for the first time in months. Arthur was arrested 11 days later. It didn't happen with sirens or flashing lights. It happened like most real justice does, quietly, efficiently, cold as a bank vault. Claire forwarded me the link to the local paper's online edition. Local man arrested for financial exploitation of elderly woman Daniels faces multiple felony charges after allegedly stealing over $400,000 from retired business owner Nora May, 67, of Ridgefield Heights. The article didn't mention the safe, or the Rolex, or the DNA test. Just the money, like that's the only thing worth measuring. But I knew what he'd really tried to steal. My peace, my memory, my name. And he failed. The next day, I received an email from leslie.ann.smith.legal@innomail.com. Subject line: I'm sorry. I didn't open it. I didn't delete it either. I left it there, unread, unopened, and entirely too late. She hadn't sent it from her personal account. She'd sent it through counsel. That told me everything. Leslie still wasn't speaking to me. She was protecting herself from me. I didn't need revenge. I needed boundaries. And she had drawn hers in red tape. So I responded the only way that mattered. I said nothing. Instead, I met with Pennington again and finalized 2 documents. 1. A cease and desist regarding direct contact from Leslie Smith, unless filed through proper legal counsel. 2. A revised estate plan that closed every remaining loophole. Arthur's accounts were already frozen. My funds, every last stolen cent, were in recovery. And Raina, God bless her, had connected me with a forensic accountant who now monitored every transaction in real time. I changed my passwords again, not because I had to, but because it reminded me I could. Power, I realized, isn't about control. It's about clarity. And mine had returned. The neighbors started whispering, of course. Carol from across the street asked me, in her syrupy way, "Oh, Nora, how are you holding up?" I smiled like a woman with nothing left to lose. "I'm just fine, Carol," I said. "Turns out spring cleaning can happen in the fall." And then I closed my door. Because some things, some people, are better left outside. By October 20th, the cleanup was complete. Arthur's assets, what little he hadn't blown, were seized. His cousin's Shell LLC was exposed and dissolved. The auction house returned 2 items that hadn't yet sold. One of them was Walter's engraved watch. When I opened the small velvet box, my breath caught in my throat. There it was. W, for every hour we had. Not stolen, just lost. For a while. Like me, the forensic accountant assigned to my estate made his final report that week. Every fraudulent transfer was documented. Clawback procedures initiated. I recovered over $418,000 of the stolen funds. Not all, but enough. Enough to remind myself that I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor. And survivors audit everything. I added 2 new clauses to my will. One made Claire the irrevocable successor trustee. No contest, no interpretation. The other formally excluded Leslie Smith and her descendants from any future claim. Pennington looked up from the document and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Yes," because I forgave her the moment I gave her up. But forgiveness doesn't equal access. He nodded once. Understood. That afternoon, I changed the locks on my house. Not out of fear, out of ritual. It felt symbolic. A click, a shift, a quiet ceremony of saying no more. I also boxed up everything Arthur had touched. Mugs, sweaters, the tie he wore to Walter's funeral that he claimed just felt respectful. I didn't burn it. I didn't smash anything. I donated the whole box to the local community center. Let someone else decide what to do with his scraps. I had no use for them. I began sleeping with the windows open again. The house was mine. The quiet was mine. And for the first time in months, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the maple trees turn. Not everything needed to be filed, locked, or protected. Some things, like peace, just needed space. Claire came by that weekend with a pumpkin pie and a look that said she was watching me closely. "You okay, Mom?" she asked. I smiled. Real, this time. "I'm better than okay. I'm clean." She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't have to.